at all this attention I'm getting. Only LOLs and dubs, we winning. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Got a choice, gonna make your decision. Whoa.
Hi, this is Ralph Klishevich on Creativity, episode number 5. I am super excited because I have Taj McCoy with me. He is a rapper, but also a singer, musician, and an actor.
Yeah.
Our paths have crossed where you were always in front of my camera, I'm always behind the camera, so we never had a really good chance to chat about essentially anything other than me giving you directions, right?
Yeah.
So this is a good opportunity for that, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Taj McCoy. I'm from the south side of Chicago. I sing, I rap, I act, I dance, I produce, and I also write as well.
Let's start with this. Tell me, how did you get into the entire creative process?
Ooh. Oh, man. So as far as like just getting into like the creative process, if we want to go into like the history of it,
Yes.
I would have to start with my father. My father, Daryl McCoy. He basically he told me the story of when I was 3 years old and he was playing this song by Joe called "The Things Your Man Won't Do," and he said that I was in a child seat singing. He could hear my voice. He could hear me singing, and he said from there he just put a microphone in front of me, and he gave me so many tools. I remember him buying me like a little electronic drum set. He bought me the beat machine that I used to make mixtapes on. So I was like rapping and recording myself, making like these beats and stuff.
Define for me creativity.
Creativity it's being able to take nothing and to create something out of it, and that's the thing. It's from scratch when you say create. Like when I create, I don't really think about creating unless I'm like with my producer and it's like we sit down and we're like, all right, we're gonna try and write. But if it's at my own will, it's like I don't think about it. It just becomes, it just is, And honestly, I surprise myself with what I come up with, which is the beauty of it.
My other guest, we spoke about creative process as a interpretive process. So we look at our world. We, the artists, are the lens through which we interpret the world, and our creative process is the interpretation. But you look at it as a creation from scratch. I really like that idea. I never thought of it. In your opinion, the creative process, there is no control. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
When there's no control, it's you literally getting uncomfortable. It's you making as many mistakes as possible, and learning from it. And basically, just being able to adapt to. You also have to learn how to adapt because, I don't know, like when I look at the stuff that I do, like with my band, it's like, that's completely left field from like all the music that I do solo.
Got it.
So being able to adapt and, fit as well, into certain modes, being like water, like Bruce Lee, like just being shapeless, formless, that still gives you the freedom to create within the bounds. But when you take the bounds away, you're water, man, you just go everywhere, and
Perfect analogy for creativity.
Yes, man, water. And that's the thing, like even if you look at, say I am water and it's like I'm in a bad mood. And now you have this tsunami and it's like it's a lot of power behind it. It's no calm. It's the same thing It's I have the ability to create, give life, be calm. Everybody comes to the beach when it's nice and calm and it's a cool day, the waves are cool. But boy, once the tsunami starts, everybody runs for the hills.
Being from Southside, Chicago, your perspective, how does that influence your art?
Man, I am from 79th Street. If most people don't know, if you take the red line, there's that stop, 79th. I grew up literally a block west of Lafayette. Being on the south side, man, I've seen so much, man. And the craziest thing is that I've totally been at the wrong place at the wrong time. I've, you know, I've experienced tremendous loss. But what I would say is that what helped me stay grounded, like I said, it was my dad and my father. Like, so my mom and my dad are married, and they're still married to this day. So I grew up in a two-parent household. So my father was always in my life. He gave me, music because he knew that was something that, I was very passionate about. Coming from the South Side, I stood out, like my parents, they always told me, be yourself, be original, don't follow the trend, and I did, and I went through some hell. Like when I was like a kid, like people bullied me, they made fun of me, they thought I was weird for always being like a creative and wanting to dance and wanting to sing and stuff like that. But it's like looking back at it now, it's like, well, yeah, man, it's because they didn't understand. My parents also, they didn't keep me too much like in the hood like that. Like they sent me to school in Hyde Park. They sent me to school in Old Town. I went to a fine arts center as a child. So yeah, 5th grade was when I went to Franklin Fine Arts Center. I'm not really artistic and stuff, but
you're creative.
yeah, I take all that into, it was still me learning something. And I would say learning the different art forms and stuff all, kind of helped me open up to like, different avenues of things. So I did drama class, I did singing, I did dance. I was like the lead of like one of the dance shows at my grammar school. It was where I needed to be. And then on top of that, I was in a diverse setting. So it was a little bit of everybody all in one spot. And to me, I've always felt like, man, if everybody can eat who's hungry. So I believe that having a nice, diverse, group.
As a hip hop artist, do you think it's important to be authentic? In other words, be honest about your past, the things that you've experienced, the loss, the pain, maybe violence back in on the 79th Street. How important do you think is when you write music, when you write lyrics for your songs, to be honest about those things?
My aggression when it comes to like me putting like my pain in my music is always going to come out as like something braggadocious. So an example is, man, if a nigga want it, I can have it, not a problematic. I just push my limit, scrimmage, little bitch, I just got a basket. We just make it happen, ain't no capping, leave them flabbergasted. We just double, triple, multiply, and keep on fucking stacking. And
Nice.
to me, thank you. To me, that's like a chant. It's like an affirmation. And it's like whenever I went through something that was like rough, tough, a loss, I always, I probably felt it. I felt sad, but I always was able to create something out of it.
Yeah, well, I agree. Creativity, you have to use everything that's within you.
Yeah.
One of my guests said that being an artist is to walk up to the abyss, look down,
Yep.
and don't fall.
Yes. Yes.
So
Looking deep into the void for
The
sure.
void, the abyss, the hole, whatever you want to
Yes.
call it, and use that
Yeah.
to tell your art. Like you said, you talk about some of the lyrics that you talk about are being, what's the word that you use?
Flabbergasted.
Flabbergasted. Yeah, exactly. But there are layers of truth about your environment, right? So you use that, and then you sort of interpret it, and then you create art out of it, right?
Yeah. So that's like that whole braggadocious attitude is that's the hood, man. Like it's having nothing and getting something and finally getting something and realizing that you had it within you. You weren't even supposed to have it, first off. So that's how a lot of people, they look at it. Like, once I get it, and it's like, I'm from this section, it's like, man, I'm not supposed to have it. I'm gonna live it up. And that's why, if you see like most of the like the YNs and the young dudes out here, man, it's like, I'm not mad at them. You know, they found something that worked and they get into it. And so it's like they have this braggadocious I defeated the monster. You get what I'm saying? It's like I was the one that made it out, you know? And that's literally what you kind of wear on you. You wear it like it's like a I'm about to say a master's, like the master's jacket. You get what I'm saying? Because it's like only a chosen few make it out. Only a chosen few get to tell their story. And technically history is written by the victor.
My favorite hip hop song is Ice Cube, Today is a Good Day.
Yeah.
Right? Or is that the title?
Yeah. That's it.
And the reason I really love it, because and you watch the music video. I remember watching the music video. I think when it first came out, I was actually maybe it was 8th grade, or maybe I was like freshman in high school, 15, 16. And you see the story, and he's able to tell the story so effectively, right? Mm-hmm. He is writing the history. Ice Cube brought some of the history, right? So
he's a great storyteller. That's why he was the writer for basically MWA. Like, he wrote most of that music for them.
So let me ask you this. In your opinion, what separates the authentic, good storytellers within the world of hip hop, rap, and the ones that are going to have their moment on Instagram?
It really depends on the person's mastery, through storytelling. So I always, looked at it as, if you're a good storyteller, if you're a good writer, you would write it as if the person is sitting right in that moment. So that means you're paying attention to key details, like you're paying attention to probably like the coffee stains on the table. You're paying attention to how the light is hitting the curtain. You're paying attention to how somebody's probably, running their pinky finger around the rim of like a drink or something, So it's really being able to take, the things that most people take for granted and don't pay attention to, and making it unique and relatable at the same time. The good storytellers are the people that can tell their story and also tell somebody else's story as well, just as well as the other person. The bad storytellers will probably only be able to tell their story. And when I look at a lot of songs throughout hip hop, I would say Hip Hop Saved My Life by Lupe Fiasco. He's telling a story about Slim Thug, which was crazy because none of us knew. And Slim Thug didn't even know. But when he told that story, he told it so perfectly. Like, the first verse is basically, just introducing him, saying what he's doing, what he got going on. Second verse, is kind of getting a little bit deeper into things, and it's kind of getting to like him getting to like his getting to like his triumphant moment, and then the third verse is him getting there, but realizing that there's so much more work to do outside of it, that he kind of has to put it on hold until he can touch it again. And it's just a very deep story. And the fact that he was able to take somebody else's life, and tell it like it was his own.
Let me ask you this. What story do you want to tell through your artwork? Is there something that you sort of focus on? Is there something that unites all of your work into sort of a common theme, a narrative?
Oh man, it's really just not giving up and just having belief in yourself, that's literally the main goal for all of my music. That's why I still do it, is because, one, I love it, and it's like, in order to really get some of the best stuff, you have to love it, It's a love-hate relationship for sure, but sure. I love it.
Well, we discussed with other guests that art is not just fun stuff, unless you're doing crappy art and you just want to drop some cool beats and show off how cool you are and so on. Yeah. It's really to get to that painful stuff, right? Yeah. It's really to get to, this is my story. This is a story that has a combination of pain, frustrations, and as you said, not giving up. I mean, have this sort of strength against different odds that maybe you're faced with, right?
Yeah. Man, it's, I would say a story that I've been meaning to tell this whole time is the story of my younger brother. I lost my younger brother back in literally September 2013.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it's been 12 years, and I lost him a week before his golden birthday. So my brother, his name was Jonathan Marcus McCoy. Me and him were 3 years apart, and me and him were as different as night and day. But that was my best friend. Me and him liked a lot of the same stuff, but when it came to I have probably a couple of songs that I have, but I have not perfected them because I'm not ready to tell that story yet. And that's probably because that's probably the one that hurts the most, And to me, I feel like it'll probably never be perfect. That's a story, and that's kind of like my whole thing is like the urban royalty is coming from like the South Side, coming from the hood, not falling victim to what's around me, making it out, and basically telling the story like, man, you can do it too. And it's like, you don't.
Yeah, that's a very positive story.
Yeah.
And that's something you refer to, overcoming. You said one of the main themes from most hip hop is overcoming difficulties, right?
Yeah.
And that seems to be ringing true in your art, whether it's in front of a microphone or in front of a camera.
Boy, because, man, it's like, that's the thing. Like, I'm 32. So it's like, most dudes from like where I'm from, they're excited to make it past 24. So it's like making it past 24 is a big deal, And but now with how the violence is and stuff, and how a lot of these dudes are moving, man. A lot of these kids are happy to make it to 18 to 21, And it's sad, but this is where also having vision, will help you get through that, because not everybody born on the South Side is a killer. Not everybody, that grow up in a hood, is gonna rob you, do drugs and stuff like that. It's people out here that have vision, and that's why I feel like having vision and belief, when you're in a certain place or you're in a certain situation, will always help you get out.
And against the context of constant struggle, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But that's the thing. It's like adversity is going to always be there. So it's like, it's really on what are you going to do when it arises.
Exactly.
So like when it comes to music and when it comes to life in general, it's really about just facing it and taking it. If you lose, you lose. A lot of people, a lot of people, man, they don't like losing. And I'm like, that's a part of life. You're going to lose. And it's like, the thing is that your losses aren't losses if you learn from them.
Do you think by doing your work of art, do you learn something about yourself?
Oh, yeah, every time. So I would say, as far as like music, especially as of recently, I've kind of been branching out of like my normal comfort zone. And you find out what you're made of once you get out of your comfort zone. Like if you go perform at a certain place and it's not your crowd and you still get up there and do your thing and people end up loving you, it's like, wow, okay. Like, damn. All right, well, I can do this. But you'll never know that if you don't get out of your comfort zone. I'm also okay with people not liking it too.
Exactly.
So it's getting up there, not expecting really anything. It's really, I have something to present to you guys. It's either it's going to touch you or it's not going to be your cup of tea. I would say most people that are doing, music now and that don't have a true like love or authenticity to themselves, they're pure entertainment. And for the entertainment purposes, it works. But I would say for the long-term goal and effect, you know, it's not gonna last too well, because what you're doing, you know, is it's an act. It's an act for
It's an act. It's a fake act.
Yes.
And tell me if I'm wrong about this, but I think time is what will determine who are the true artists and who are not. Because now a lot of people might have their moment on stage or on Spotify or maybe on Instagram, YouTube, but are they going to be listened to a decade later?
what a lot of the great artists do is they aim to be timeless. And that was
Yes.
always something that ever since I was a kid, I always knew, I'm like, man, I want my music to be timeless. I want it to be played like you could play it 10 years from now and it still sounds like it just came out.
A real good artist and their art is very relatable, because if they're authentic, more likely than not, there are components of their story that relate to other people.
Yeah.
Like you grew up in the South Side, and I might not never experienced it, never be on the South Side. I'm an immigrant from Poland. But I'm sure if we were to sit down and talk about, there are probably certain parallels, there are frustrations, pain points and maybe you coming into the world of different, diversity. Now maybe hanging out with kids in the suburbs and so on, and me coming from a different country, learning language. I bet you there are things that are parallel.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know?
yeah. Yeah.
And then if we're honest about it, you could appreciate my story and I can appreciate yours,
Yeah.
because there's that honesty component of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's totally the fact that, the fact that we're all so different.
Yeah.
There is going to be something that parallels between us, and we're all still here.
Yeah. So I'll give you, go for that. I'll sort of talk a little about my pain when I first came to the United States. I want to say I was 12 years old, and I came here. Prior to that, I lived in Italy for 2 years. So this was not my first experience entering a new world. But it was different because when I lived in Italy, I was there with a big cohort of other Polish transient immigrants that were there for 2 years to get their paperwork and then come to the United States. But then I moved to, I think first it was in Chicago, and I went to school, and there was maybe like 1 or 2 Polish kids, and the rest of it. And I remember going into this classroom, and I was just so overwhelmed, and I think potentially very scared too, because first of all, you enter this classroom and there's people speaking a language you don't understand at all, right? And then you're trying to pick up, and what you're doing is then your observation is so acute. I know maybe 20 words, and I'm sitting in the classroom, always observing, always looking, always listening. And then eventually, you learn the language. And I think there were some Italian kids in Elmwood Park that I was able to speak Italian with, but otherwise I would just, like some kid was like start laughing at me, and they're laughing because they said something about, and I don't even understand what you're saying, that I sat there.
Yeah.
So those were there were the bad things about it, because you're scared and you're afraid, and you're always cautious in what you do. You're very calculated in every behavior, but at the same time, it crafts your perspective. And I'm assuming you going from Southside, entering a world maybe with kids, bunch of like white kids and so on, have a different perspective. Maybe you felt similar things, right? And similar pains, so similar fears.
So I would say, yeah, like every time I would have to go to like a new school. So when I transferred from St. Thomas to Franklin Fine Arts Center, the thing was that it was the place where I needed to be, but it was just being this kid from the South Side and this new school, in this hodgepodge of different ethnicities and stuff. It was like, I was scared.
Yeah. And you can't show it, obviously. And the same thing with me. I could not show it. First of all, I couldn't speak the language, so I couldn't communicate that I was afraid, but I just sat there. I became very stoic. If somebody said something to me, I was just trying to extract this. Do they want something from me? Are they making fun of me? Are they... And I just had to make a decision. And most of the time, as long as I said silent, they left me alone, I was okay. But when you went to the school, were there a lot of kids like you?
It was diverse. You get what I'm saying? It was diverse. As far as like, I guess like my personality, I would say that there wasn't nobody there like me.
Yeah.
But as far as like the ethnicity and stuff, it was like, yeah, it was black kids, white kids, it
So there was
was,
diversity.
yeah, it was very much diverse.
When you live in your environment, it might be, let's say, I might look at 79th Street on South Side, dangerous. You want to get out of there as soon as possible. But why people stick around there? Because there's some safety there, right? Especially if you're a kid and so on. And same thing happened to me when I first came to the United States. I felt very, very isolated, and almost. Now, I knew I was in a better environment moving to the United States, and my future was going to be better than, let's say, living in Poland. But as a 12-year-old, you don't understand that. You just say, "Oh my God, I am scared."
Yeah. So I would say, man, you would think, you know, that it would be a reason why, but I'm gonna be honest with you. Man, just be real with you. From what I know, a lot of people they really don't have no other choice, because it's still like poverty and stuff on the
Yeah,
south
yeah, of
side.
course.
So, yeah, it's dangerous, but nobody. Some people ain't got no choice. Like they
Yes.
they have to survive. You get what I'm
Gotcha. Yeah,
saying?
it's like a survival from day to day. Yeah.
It's because it's a
There is no other
jungle.
choice. Yeah, yeah.
People, they say that, yeah, it's a jungle. It is a jungle. I totally believe that. As long as you still have breath in your body, you make a plan, you have a vision, you have a goal, man. You can go anywhere you want.
If we're getting more personal and real, right? Let's talk about the music video that we both worked on. Probably the most rewarding film projects I've ever done.
Oh
The
yeah,
most stressful, painful to work with, to get the permits, but it was so rewarding, right? Once we got it done. I think maybe what you alluded earlier to is this water. I had this water and it was contained. I don't want, but once the water spilled and mixed with other liquids, so to speak, metaphorically speaking, we made all together that project happen.
my mom, I guess she couldn't tell what I was doing or what was going on, but it was to the point where she was getting uncomfortable watching me do all this stuff
Yeah,
on
yeah.
camera. But it was really good, man.
Because it was uncomfortable because it was so authentic.
Yeah.
If you were just like this flamboyant gangster, people would just see it as. That's why I think the project was so difficult because we had to be very, very careful not to make this into just shoot and gun and typical rap video. It had to be very authentic.
Yeah.
Locations. I remember I spent several weeks just picking the right location, checking the light, from which way the sun's going to come in, the makeup artist, and it had to be authentic.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we would be completely abused in the world of
Yeah,
film, and then
Well, yeah, I would say I didn't want to overdo it.
Yeah.
As far as being like a bad guy, and it's like the thing is that most of the dudes that I know that are probably on that type of time, they're more chill.
Yeah.
They don't really say too much.
Yeah.
9 times out of the 10, they probably the quietest person in the room. You get what I'm saying? They ain't saying too much, and it's like their actions will always speak louder than their words. So that was the mentality that I went into it with, was that I don't have to. I don't need to say anything. Like, I'm technically big dog. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
So what I say go, and that's how I'm gonna move. So that was literally my mindset going into it, is that I'm big dog.
And I remember there was a moment you even corrected me, and I thought, I was like, he's got a point. He's right. I think it was a shot in the basement, or I think wanted you. I don't remember what it was. I gave you some direction. You said, no, my character wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And then I remember that, and no, I didn't take it personal. I was like, there was the appropriate criticism. It wasn't an argument. It was there was an appropriate input from an actor that tells the director, listen, this might not be authentic. And yeah, we went with your version. Tell me about your acting. Do you feel, and you see a lot of rappers going into acting, do you think there's something that you as an artist, as a rapper, is then brought into your craft as an actor?
I've done plays, I've done, skits, and now I'm doing movies. And, when it comes to like acting, it's really just taking what I do in music and just putting it on my face.
I love it.
So it's about different characters when it comes to like acting. And also it's the same thing in music. So like I was saying, it's like the storytelling aspect is being able to take somebody else's story and tell it through your lens to a point where it's so good that it sounds like it's your story. It's literally the same thing when it comes to acting. So it's like once I find out who I'm playing, I got to figure out how am I going to shape this person? How is Taj McCoy going to shape into this person? So with Kendrick, you know, it was kind of that kind of worked very well because I was still like pretty young and I was kind of like lost into like who Kendrick was, but Kendrick was also lost as well, trying to find himself. And by the end of that first film, I was able to like find my groove with it so that when part 2 came, it was like, oh, I know this dude. I'm like, man, we've been here before.
What you're saying is it's a learning process too, right? You learn
yeah.
through your characters. You evolve, right?
Oh yeah. It's a lot of taking what's needed, discarding what's not, and adding your own spin to it, basically. So it's like with Kendrick, he's a good guy. So I had to take a lot of the good parts of me and I had to push those to the forefront. And I had to take a lot of, probably some like insecurities or certain things about me out, in order to play Kendrick.
Yeah.
And me just adding my own spin to it is probably like the wittiness and the jokes, the face expressions that I typically, add. And, that's typically how I go into every role.
Where would you like to see yourself in the next 10 years?
What am I, 32 now? 42. Man, in the next 10 years, I would like to see myself still acting, still performing, still doing all the creative things that I'm doing now, just times 10. And
I don't think you have that in your schedule.
well, not right now, but I totally believe that within the next 10 years that I will have that in my schedule. And at that point, I'll also be an OG. I'll be helping out, doing a whole bunch of stuff in the community in different places. Like my goal is to be at a point where it's like I can give out opportunity. If you can get inspiration, that's enough to just get you to start. It's just enough to push you down the hill so you can start rolling. I think that right there is literally one of the biggest things that I believe the greatest artists possess, is the ability to inspire.